Hi everyone, Brian here, and this is video number 2 that I filmed today. I'm having a bit of a video filming marathon today because I've got some time to do it, and also there are so many fantastic VRs that I want to respond to and things that I want to speak to you about. And this video is my VR to Jeff Burr, the tattooed spirit. So Jeff, this is a VR from me, BCC, and this is the VR to Jeff's current hashtag, which is the Hang 10 Tarot tag, and I'll put Jeff's original video below. But just speaking very briefly in terms of what the tag is about, Jeff asked us to pick our favourite tarot deck and then look at 10 cards in that deck and comment on what we notice about what's happening in the cards in relation to how characters in the cards are using their left or their right hands. And Jeff explains that in his way of looking at this, the left hand is about receiving and is the kind of yin, passive, flowing, responsive kind of element or aspect, and then the right hand is the more active, yang, giving, forceful aspect. And this just absolutely fascinated me. So and something sprung to mind immediately as Jeff was speaking about this in his video, which I encourage you to watch. And so I am responding. I am, however, bending the rules somewhat, because of course what's a good tarot tag without bending the rules just a little bit? I'm all for that. And I am going to talk in 10 segments, but I'm actually using a bit more than 10 cards, and I'm not using all one deck. I'm actually using a selection of decks, partly because as soon as I started thinking about this tag, what came to mind immediately was, were several cards from several different decks. So that's what I'm doing. I hope you can forgive me, Jeff, and we'll see where this takes us. So we're going to start with a good old traditional one, and this is the Empress card from the Rider-Waite tarot, and this is in fact the edition that I recently acquired, the 1971 edition of the Rider-Waite tarot that arrived as part of my tarot bonanza, which I made a video about recently. And I'm also going to link below a video that I did quite a while ago, one of my earlier videos, where I talked about how the Empress card, particularly in the Rider-Waite tarot, is very important to me. And I won't go into all of the detail here because I go into a lot more detail in that video. But just very briefly, the Empress card is important to me because when I was very young, when I was 9, my mum died, and before she died, I didn't know that she was going to die. She was ill, but I didn't know consciously that she was going to die. I had a dream, and in that dream she appeared to me on stage, being pulled across the stage in this kind of ornate cart with a crown of stars on her head. I was the only one in the theatre watching this, and she was being pulled from my right to my left. And the long and the short of it is, when I woke up, whether I knew this immediately or not, I'm not sure, but certainly what was kind of transmitted to me by that dream in terms of meaning was that my mum was leaving this life, leaving this plane of existence, you might say. And there were all kinds of other things transmitted to me in that dream, including that, you know, well, the short version is that behind all appearances everything's okay, which I know sounds completely bizarre in some respect, but you'll understand more about what I mean if you look at the video, which I'll link below, of my Empress dream. And the reason that this is significant in terms of left and right is, of course, that in the dream, she was going from right to left, and that told me that she was leaving. And of course, in the tarot, she is coming. She's entering the tarot from right to left. From left to right. So she's coming into the play of the tarot, if you like. And in my dream, going from right to left meant that she was leaving. And of course, the Empress is about mother. And in fact, I'm going to just read you a quote, and again this relates to the idea of left and right. This is a quote which I found, which really spoke to me about the concept of mother and also about this issue of left and right. And actually it comes from a book by a writer called Zina Schreck, who is an occultist and who wrote a book called Demons of the Flesh, The Complete Guide to Left-Hand Path sex magic. And the quote here that's relevant in this context is, always remember, wherever you are, whether near or far, you had a mother who really, really loved you, the original mother. Once you've found your true inner guru, you can never again be divided. Perfect union with the divine, through the grace of your real teacher, transcends time, space, death, and all worldly limitations. Your real teacher is the original mother, regardless in which manifest or non-manifest form or gender she appears, the one who nurtures you and the one who also, out of wisdom and compassion, corrects you if you are misguided. And so that really spoke to me about the idea of the mother archetype existing in a whole host of different ways, and I go into that concept in more detail in my video. So that's my first one, the Empress moving in the tarot from left to right into the story of the tarot, and that being significant. So my next card is Temperance, and this is from Tarot of the Crone. And what's significant here, this is one of the cards that sprung to mind as soon as I listened to Jeff's tag, is what you notice in this card is that this character is quite it's quite difficult doing this, because I'm seeing the image in my screen and of course it's reversed and I'm trying to not get my left and right muddled up. So this character is balanced between the very cold, icy left hand, sorry, their left hand, we're looking at the right, but I'm talking about the figure from their perspective. So their left hand is in touch with this kind of cold, icy, cool side aspect, and the right hand, their right hand, is in touch with this fiery, more warm and active aspect. And what that says to me is something about the need to, you know, we all want to be, or I think we all want to be passionate people. We want to be able to express ourselves in the world in some way, whatever that means. And that doesn't mean that we all have to be jumping up and down and be very fiery in doing that. But we want to express ourselves. We want to be who we are, and we want to say that we are who we are. And for me, there's something here about passion, this energy of ourselves going out into the world, and that's this side of it. But there being a need, in terms of what we take in from the world, to apply a bit of logic and rationalism and cool consideration, because that's what stops us being bowled over by other people's energy and by the swings and fortunes of life. You know, we can remain steady and steadfast in this turbulent world by taking things in a considered way, and by doing that we are able to transmute them hopefully in a positive way into our own passion, and to send that out into the world in a passionate, fiery, energetic way that is useful to us and to the rest of the world. So that's what this card made me think of. And then I also then thought of Temperance again in, you know, my third choice is Temperance in the Tarot of Transformation. And the key word, or the key phrase in this deck for Temperance, is integrating polarities. And the reason I chose this one is, if what you notice here is there's these two figures which look almost like they might be mirror figures of each other, looking at each other. But what you notice is that although they have got arms, they don't actually have hands, because those hands extend way out into the cosmos and into this spiral galaxy. And if you look really closely, what you also see is that their hands, or their arms, are connected to each other. So there's this kind of cycle that's going on here. And for me, this is kind of saying that integrating polarities, there's something here about the idea, this kind of non-duality of giving is receiving and receiving is giving, and beyond the appearance of differences, they're actually the same. So I'll probably say a bit more about that in a moment on the basis of some other cards, but that's another Temperance example from Tarot of Transformation. So that's number 3. Now then, I think this is number 4 and 5. I can't remember if they're coming together or whether they're separate. We'll call it number 4 and 5 in case I've miscalculated and we don't have enough cards. And this is from the Masonic Tarot. and the lovely Masonic Tarot, which has got all kinds of interesting dimensional aspects to it because it's very much based on the principles of sacred geometry, so it's well worth looking into if you haven't come across it. And the card that immediately sprung to mind here was the Sun, and what you see here is this beautiful Sun card with all of the elements in perfect balance around the people. The Dove of Peace is coming down, everything is just, you know, it's balanced, it's whole. The Sun is in this kind of triangular shape. It's got this crown of sovereignty there. It's just a perfectly beautiful, balanced, happy card. And what you notice here is that the characters are holding each other's hand. And what we have is this perfect union of characters giving to each other. So one is giving, the other is receiving. And of course, you know, depending on how you look at it, and depending on whether you look at this version of the card or whether you were to look at it, these people were to look at themselves in a mirror, you know, it's difficult to tell whom is giving to who. But certainly in this card, it appears that this character, if we go by Jeff's notion that the right is giving and the left is receiving, here we have this person who is giving on the right, and the person who's receiving on the left. And again, I'm looking at it and it looks different on the screen, so it's very difficult to say. Now, but what interested me about this was, of course, the idea of right being giving and left being receiving works, but I think there could be something to say if you are, in fact, like I am, left-handed. Now, I'm actually not entirely left-handed, so I write with my left hand, and that's about all I do with my left hand, actually. So if I'm playing sport, which doesn't happen very often, I would do it right-handed. So if I'm using a tennis racket or something, I would do it right-handed. If I'm using a golf club, I would swing the way that, you know, somebody who's right-handed would. I don't use my fork and knife in a different way to right-handed people. I use it as they would use it. I cut using my right hand if I'm using scissors, but I do write with my left hand, which I know is a bit odd. And there is a story in my family, which my dad takes great delight in telling at family gatherings, many times, is that when I was very young and in nursery school, I was scribbling with some crayons, and I think I believe he tells me I was using my right hand, and the nursery nurse came round and said something like, oh, you know, it's good to see that Brian is using his right hand for drawing. And the story goes, and I can't believe this about myself, but my dad swears it's true. The story goes that I just fixed this nurse with a steely glare, moved the crayon from my right hand to my left hand, and Brian, you've been left-handed ever since. That is how the story goes. So there's something there about, you know, the handedness being relevant depending on whether you're left or right-handed. And I also wanted to, you know, say that card put me in mind of the Lover's card, and in this deck we have the Lover card, and what you notice, or what I noticed about this, is there's a man, or it could be two men, and he is looking at one of two women. And this card, of course, in many decks really relates more to choice than it does to love, in the sense that we understand it to be. So this card could be looked at as this man having to make a choice of lover, and the two sides of the man having to make a choice. But what I also notice is that this man is holding the hand of the other man, and again, it's right hand to left hand. So the question being, who is giving to whom? I will leave you to contemplate that, but I think there's something very interesting in that. And this is a gorgeous deck, by the way. There are some walkthroughs on YouTube. I encourage you to look at them. So my next card is, this is the Ace of Discs or Coins or Pentacles, depending on how you want to say it, in the Lesico Tarot, which used to be called the New Tarot. And I am going to get around to trimming this. I'm just waiting for some backing paper to arrive so I can back it. It's not terribly sturdy. And I'm going to trim away the white borders. But this is the Ace of Pentacles, and of course, you know, or coins or discs. So aces are about beginnings and initiating and so on, and Pentacles being about earthy, real security, money, physical things. And what we notice here is, well, that this figure seems to be half in and half out of the pentacle. Are they in or are they out? And looking at it, it's their left hand that is available to the world if we take what we're seeing of them to be the world. So that says to me something about being in a position to receive from the world, and in terms of the beginning of something, the need to initiate coming from something tangible and practical and applicable. And if we want to create something in the world, we need to utilize the world resources. You know, we might bring it to existence through our mind, our intuition and our passion, but in order for it to become physically real, we need to take from the world in order to give from the world. And that can be quite difficult to do, because of course there's this whole issue of living lightly on the planet, and the difficulty we have when we realize that as much as we might try, each of us take from the world just by being here, but we also give to the world by being here. And this card speaks to me of this notion, and of part of us, even though we're in the world and taking from it, another part of us being somewhere deeper and in a position to receive in a way that, or to give in a way that ultimately could benefit the world. So I'm rambling somewhat, but that's kind of what put me in mind there. And then related to that, what made me then think of that, and I'm going to do these as a group. These are cards from the Sacred Rose Tarot. And I just had a thought in my mind to have a look at this deck, because I had a feeling that something was the case, and it turned out to be. And well, let's just have a look at cards, and then I'll tell you what I've noticed in common with them. So that's the Ace of Pentacles. That's the Ace of Cups. Let's just do all the aces. That might be the easiest thing to start with. Ace of Wands. This is a lovely deck. I love the Sacred Rose. And Ace of Swords. So those are the aces. Oh, and here comes Maya, I believe. So what I'll say about the aces, first of all, is all of those items were being held in right hands. So again, going by Jeff's notion of the right being about giving, what this says to me is the aces are giving us something. And in fact, from my point of view, that's what the tarot is about. It gives us something. Sometimes it gives us answers, sometimes it gives us more questions, but it gives us something. It's a very giving tool. We come to it with an open mind and with our questions, sometimes with real concerns, and it gives us something very deep and very special. And what I notice in this deck is that many of the characters are holding things in their right hand, and they are giving. So the Charioteer is pointing with his wand and moving things forward. The Light of the Hermit is being given. It's in his right hand. And then here are the Queens and the Kings, and they again are holding the informing suit item, whether it's a wand or a cup or a sword. They are giving it. They are not holding it back. They are giving. And then this card, another favourite of mine, is the Eight of Wands. And again, what we see here is that it is a right hand that is releasing these wands and sending them flying. And for me, this is important, because to me, the Eight of Wands, although in some decks it's suggested that the wands are coming down, in my mind they are flying up. And in this, that's the case, and they are being given motion and life and energy. So that's those. And now we're going to look at a couple of cards in the Thoth Tarot. And again, looking at left-handedness and right-handedness. The Hierophant in the Thoth Tarot. And what I notice here is that the, if you like, the giving hand, the giving hand, the right hand is holding this key and is holding it up against himself, and the left hand is pointed down to the earth, in a gesture that could actually mean giving, but here the character is, it's the, again, it's the left hand of the character that's doing this. And the right hand, the giving hand, has got this key. So it's almost a bit like this card is saying, I'm the expert, I've got the key, and I get to choose whether I give you the key or not. I'm holding it in my giving hand, but I'm not giving it to you, I'm holding it against me. And I'm taking your adulation, your attention, your worship, your belief. I expect that of you, and I might give you the key. So that's something that struck me with this card. And then I contrasted it with the Star card. And I think this is a gorgeous card. I think it's one of the most gorgeous cards in the Thoth deck. And it's very important, of course, because a very famous quote from Crowley, Aleister Crowley, is, every man and woman is a star. And here we have the Star deck, the Star tarot card. And in this card we have the figure holding 2 cups. And what you notice about the cups is that the cup that's held in the giving hand, the right hand, is actually pouring the substance, whatever this is, light or energy, down on the character. And then the receiving hand, the left hand, is down on the earth, but in this case isn't necessarily receiving from the earth, unless of course the cup is sucking things up from the earth. It's giving to the earth, it's pouring something onto the earth. So giving, so receiving hand is giving and giving hand is receiving, or giving back to the self. So there's something interesting there, I think, about that. And also what's interesting, of course, is what is this that's coming out of the cups? A bit like the Temperance card in many decks, it looks like, you know, water, but it's flowing in a very strange way. It's more like a vortex of energy. And I thought it might be worth to just have a look at what is said about this card in this book, which I really recommend. It's a great book on the Thoth deck. It's Understanding Aleister Crowley's Thoth Tarot by Lon Milo Duquette. So let's just have a look. I'm going to take a swig of water. Cheers. And let's see what he says about this. So just to say that in the original design, this is what Crowley wrote or indicated should be in the original design. The figure of a water nymph disporting herself, a woman naked and kneeling on her left knee, pours from a vase in her right hand silver waters into a river, by which grow roses, the haunts of coloured butterflies. With her left hand she pours golden waters over her head, which are lost in her long hair. Her attitude suggests a swastika. Above flames a great star of 7 rays. And a bit further on, what it says here, this is Lon Milo Duquette's commentary now on this card. He says, the celestial globe represents the entire heavens surrounding the earth. Therefore, all other images on this card that are placed outside of the celestial sphere must represent spiritual environments that transcend even the concept of infinite space. So that relates to the cups. The largest and smallest of the 3 stars are found outside the celestial sphere. The former spins counterclockwise like a cosmic pinwheel in the upper left corner of the card. The latter tumbles clockwise like a tiny starseed from the golden bowl in the goddess's right hand. The 3rd star whirls counterclockwise on the celestial sphere itself. The 2 cups in her hands, Crowley writes, are fashioned as breasts. As it is written, the milk of the stars from her paps, yea, the milk of the stars from her paps. From the golden cup, he continues, she pours this ethereal water, which is also milk and oil and blood, upon her own head, indicating the internal renewal of the categories, the inexhaustible possibilities of existence. Crowley completes the description thus. The left hand, lowered, holds a silver cup, from which also she pours the immortal liquor of her life. This liquor is the Amrita of the Indian philosophers, the Nepenthe and Ambrosia of the Greeks, the Alkahest and universal medicine of the alchemists, the blood of the Grail, or rather the nectar which is the mother of that blood. Traditionally, the star is the card of hope, the promise of things unseen. What is the hope that Nuit, that's the goddess in the card, offers us? What is the promise of our star goddess? I wish I could simply reprint the entire first chapter of the Book of the Law and show you, but this short excerpt might give you some idea. That was Lord Milo Duquette speaking, and here's the final excerpt. I give unimaginable joys on earth, certainty, not faith, while in life, upon death. Sorry, I'll read that again so it's clearer. I give unimaginable joys on earth, certainty, not faith, while in life, upon death. Peace unutterable, rest, ecstasy, nor do I demand aught in sacrifice. So again, this idea of giving and receiving being the same. And then finally, my last three are all taken from my newly acquired deck, which I have spoken about in my last video, which was Confessions of a Tarot Addict, and that is the Orasoma Tarot. And the interesting thing about this deck, for those of you who don't know, is it has two sets of major Arcana cards, and one set is called the Outward Journey. So this is a bit like this concept of the Empress going in, out, etc. In, out, shake it all about. I don't know what I'm talking about. Back to the point. There's two sets of major Arcana cards. One is the Outward Journey, one is the Return Journey, and what I'd like to do is contrast three of those major Arcana cards, because in the Outward Journey, what you notice of the Hierophant is there is a kind of duality, if you like, to this. So the Hierophant is using his receiving hand, the left hand, to receive this rainbow, all this light, and his giving hand has got a cup in it. The Grail, is it the Grail? Is it something else? It seems probably to look kind of Grail-like, and he's giving with his left hand, so he's holding that cup. In the Return Journey, what we see is a Hierophant who is perfectly balanced. The key of life, the Ankh key, is in both his right and his left hands, but we can't even tell which is left and which is right, because this is a mirror image and we're not sure which bit is the real bit and which bit is the mirror, and it doesn't matter. So we're beyond duality in this Return Journey. If we look at Justice on the Outward Journey, again we have got Justice giving balance, receiving balance with the left hand, which is holding the scales, and giving justice with the sword, which is in the right hand. It's so difficult to do this looking at a screen. And again, there is a sense of duality. There's a sense of decision, there's a sense of choice. In the Return Journey, there is no need to hold the scale in one hand or the other. It's perfectly balanced. The sword is in both hands. The scales are equally balanced across both, and there's something joyful about this kind of justice. There's something a bit severe about the kind of justice where you think Justice is blind and has got a sword. And here, the blinders are off. There is a sword, but there is a great deal of light here as well. And then finally, let's come full circle, back to the Empress. And I mentioned that the Empress in the Rider-Waite is coming in from stage left to stage right, entering the story of the tarot, and that is true here as well. We have the Empress looking from left to right, coming into the tarot on her outer journey. But on the inner journey, this time the opposite isn't leaving, it's not going from right to left, it isn't exiting. It's perfect harmonious balance, perfect motherhood, mother, child, love and earth. So that, I think, is a rather nice final card to look at. And I have one last quote for you, just to round things off in this conversation about left-handedness and right-handedness in the tarot. And this is a quote from Ursula K. Le Guin, who died recently, of course, and who wrote amazing books, including A Wizard of Earthsea, which I'm currently reading. And this is actually from a quote from her book, The Left Hand of Darkness. And I don't know who says this in the book, because I'm not familiar with it, but I thought it was a great quote. Light is the left hand of darkness, and darkness the right hand of light. Two are one, life and death, lying together like lovers in Kemmer, like hands joined together, like the end and the way. Which again points back to this notion that in a non-dual perspective, there is no left and there is no right. And one of my other earlier videos is about non-duality and how I think tarot works, or one of the ways that I think tarot works. So I'll link that below as well, and I think I'll be talking about that again very soon in a future video. So that's my VR to Jeff, the Tattooed Spirit, and I'm really enjoying looking at everyone else's VRs, and I hope that we see many more of them. It's a very interesting tag and really quite thought-provoking. It's not an easy one to do because it really stretches your mind a bit, and it stretches my brain when I try and tell my left from my right when I'm looking at a screen. But I hope you were able to bear with me, and I hope you found that interesting, and I hope you're all very well, and I hope to see you all again very soon. And waving with both my right and my left hand, cheerio. Bye.